Are we both in it?
Yep.
Kind of far away, but
It's not the most visually dynamic, so we'll have to let the power of our words.
we could sit in chairs, I guess.
Yeah, if you got a second one.
Maybe that would work better.
Probably a little better.
Visually sexier. Yeah. And I'll look hotter. Where am I in there? I'm in the dark.
Yes. Yeah, you got to get some fill lighting in here. Oh, cat.
Cat. Poor little Buffy kitty.
No. No. Oh. Nope. Or yes?
Yes, maybe. Okay, are we? Yeah, we're in the shot, are we?
Yeah, totally.
We're in the shot. Hello. Well, it is. It's after Christmas, and yeah, box cards, Calicat.
Yep.
This is sort of like, I guess, well, we're gonna spoil the Star Wars.
This is a follow-up review. We did one of these for Last Jedi a couple years ago,
and you're not coming to New Year's that I know of.
No, I'm probably going to be home for that. That'll be a sort of a family thing, but yeah. So we thought we'd do a little post-mortem on Rise of Skywalker, which made like $1 bajillion over the weekend. This review, there's no way that I can think of to talk about this movie without giving away plot points.
It's going to be spoilers.
So there is a massive spoiler warning.
We're going to... I already, yeah.
Yeah, don't watch this if you haven't seen it yet.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
And there will be lens flares, and yeah. For the...
Yeah, that would be Abrams, all right.
As they warned you before the movie, no lens.
So...
lights and flashing visual.
But, yeah, so I know you've seen it a couple times.
I just saw it again today.
I've seen it once. Once was enough. I really, really did not like this movie. And I will tell you why, briefly. I mean, it's all just my opinion. It's all just subjective. I think you have to ask the question as a fan, what do you want Star Wars to be? Do you want a story that subverts your expectations, or do you want a story that just meets your expectations? And I think the jarring mismatch of visions that happened during this trilogy was because, and I blame Disney for this was a bad idea on their parts. They decided that each of this new trilogy they were going to do was going to be written and directed by different people, and that they weren't going to have a cohesive battle plan for what story they wanted to tell. So they started off...
Unlike Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel, they interconnect. It's one giant movie, really. This one is well, here's what the new trilogy is, to me. It's not a trilogy. It's 2 J.J. Abrams movies with a really interesting footnote. So, The Force Awakens comes out, and as entertainingly directed as it is, Abrams is very good at action. And the movie presents itself like everyone's heart's in the right place. You know, they bring back Han Solo and all this stuff for a lot of fan service, and it's like the movie itself, its weakest element is that it's not a new story at all. It's a commercial for the franchise. It's basically just reminding you, this is Star Wars. This is what you loved as a kid. We're giving you that again. So, Force Awakens is a rushed remake of all 3 of the original Star Wars movies crammed into one thing. And it's like, okay, well, we did that. The bigger red flag for me was all of these J.J. Abrams mystery boxes that he loves to set up.
He does like doing those. And
yeah. You know, so it's like, you know, some new guy shows up, Snoke. What is Snoke? You care. You have to know the mystery. What could it be? My bigger problem is, like, you watch the original movie, not the original movie, Force Awakens, of the new trilogy. The movie not only doesn't give you any information about Snoke, it doesn't do anything to make you care about Snoke. So there's no reason for there to be a mystery. Like, it's like, could he be a clone of Boba Fett? Or it doesn't matter. Who cares? I didn't. So it's like, all right, I don't want to have to spend 3 movies having Abrams sort of wank out these, mystery box reveals so that I, as a fan, can presumably have my mind blown because he's referencing something, you know, or he's putting a new spin on like an old trope or something. So I found that kind of underwhelming. Whereas second movie comes along, they bring in a different guy. And Rian Johnson's take on what a Star Wars movie should be is very different from what Abrams would have. You know, if you sat both these guys down and asked them, so what do you think Star Wars is? You're going to get radically different answers. So Johnson made The Last Jedi, and his movie goes out of its way to subvert fan expectations. And in doing that, it also undoes or jettisons a lot of Abrams' sort of, again, to my perspective, pointless mystery boxing. What's the secret of Snoke? The Last Jedi says, who cares? Get him out of the way because he's not interesting. They cut him in half and he's just dead. And it's like, that's great because he shouldn't even be there. He's not the interesting character. Kylo Ren is the interesting villain. Snoke is just a beef jerky looking guy who's the new emperor in this one, who's just kind of like the old one. So they get rid of him, setting up, all right, now the story can be Kylo and Rey's, as much as, you know, Finn and all of them.
Yeah.
The new characters. Let's tell a new story. The other two things that Johnson did that got a lot of backlash from people who, like Abrams, I think, want Star Wars to be more about meeting expectations and dishing out fan service moments. One, he reveals the mystery box of Rey's parents and says, Rey's parents don't matter. They were nobody. They were just these junker guys and they sold her for booze money. It doesn't matter where she's from. Her past doesn't define her. More to the point, it's saying there doesn't need to be a reason for her to be good at the Force or on her way to being a Jedi. Anybody can be a Jedi, is what this movie's saying. It's like, you know, it's like believing in, you know, Harry Potter magic or whatever. It's just like if you feel it, you know, if you try hard enough, if you believe in yourself, it doesn't matter where you're from. So it democratizes being a Jedi a bit. To the people who really, really wanted there to be a fan service moment that explains Rey, this probably felt very much like a betrayal. They were like, oh, hell with you, movie. No, I wanted her to be the child of a clone of Boba Fett and, you know, Princess Leia or something. You know, which...
Or Lando's redheaded stepchild.
Exactly.
Because you know Lando.
What happens on Cloud City stays on Cloud City. So the third thing, and the thing that I think was very interesting to me, the reaction that it got, is that Johnson killed off Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Of course, it's Star Wars, you know. He just immediately comes back as a ghost.
Kind of a dick on the planet.
They kind of did, which, again, subverting expectations. They basically put a reverse spin on the Yoda and Luke dynamic in Empire Strikes Back, which I found really interesting. The story that they're telling is,
I liked Last Jedi.
You know, Luke leaves to go be a hermit, and you don't know why. And then this movie provides a character and story-driven reason for that to have happened. And it says, Luke doesn't just immediately grab the lightsaber and look at the camera and go, the Jedi are back. Ooh, and then just start mowing down, you know, stormtroopers with his lightsaber and saving everyone. It's a story about these characters finding themselves and figuring out what their place is and what they're trying to do with their lives. And again, very pointedly, this movie says your history, your background doesn't matter as much as where you're going. That's what Rian Johnson set up with The Last Jedi. So the fan backlash, there were a lot of people who loved The Last Jedi. There were a lot of people who got very angry at The Last Jedi. Disney's not in the business of making people angry, not on purpose. And I'm quite sure, I'm just speculating here, but based on how the third movie goes, I am quite sure it's not that they caved to the loudest and angriest fans. I think they just didn't want to have to hear from them. So they went out of their way to craft a movie that does not do what The Last Jedi does. In fact, it not only is the opposite of The Last Jedi, it goes out of its way to retcon The Last Jedi as much as it possibly can. So the creative decisions that happen in that movie now don't matter. The movie's basically saying, oh yeah, the second movie, yeah, whatever, don't worry about that one, forget it. Which again, I took to be very backhanded, very cynical. And I get why this happened, because the guy that they wanted to do the third movie, Colin Trevorrow, Jurassic World guy. For whatever reason, he didn't work out, so he left the project. I think they used some of his story, but he wasn't going to direct it anymore. So they were like, you know who's the safest choice here? Let's just get Abrams back. And so they brought Abrams back, and Abrams and his writing partner were like, now Abrams has been very cagey about saying, oh, I never said anything bad about The Last Jedi. If you like that movie, that's fine. You're not wrong, or maybe you like mine better. Whatever, it does, it's all just opinions. I'm looking more at what his movie does. His movie shoots the middle finger to The Last Jedi, as far as I'm concerned. He retcons the hell out of the big reveals in Last Jedi. The biggest one is, here's this one of the big spoilers. So it turns out actually Rey totally is descended from space royalty. Her granddad was Emperor Palpatine.
I want to know who he fucked.
See, here's the thing. If you're going to pull the pin on this, fan servicey reveal,
who had sex with that guy?
it damn well better make sense. To me, it doesn't. One, there's never been any indication that Palpatine was in a family way and had fathered anyone. Second of all, and this is also, I think, kind of important. The last time we saw Palpatine, he was careening on fire basically down a reactor, and then he exploded, and then the Death Star exploded. He's dead. He's like really, really dead. This movie just throws him in there. The opening cry is just, Palpatine's back. Anyway, meanwhile, on yet another desert planet, the 50th that we have seen so far, here's the problem, is like, okay, if you're going to do that, it needs to make sense. They did it, I think, largely because, one, so they could have their, she's actually really special because of her parentage and her background, but also because it is the laziest and cheapest thing they could have done. This is how terrified Abrams is of taking any dramatic or creative risks. He just brought back the dead bad guy from Return of the Jedi and threw him in. He's just there now. He literally makes so little sense that the characters comment on this when they're like, oh, the secret transmission from Empire, planet it's Palpatine, he's back. And somebody goes, wait, isn't he dead? And Joe Exposition looks up and he just goes, they could have cloned him or something. Anyway, that's it. That's it. That's all you get. The movie basically is saying, it don't matter, we put him there because you've heard of him. Because we don't have to waste any time explaining why he's there. We don't have to spend time trying to build up a new villain. We'll just plug in the thing that you've already heard of and you understand. So that's just as good. So, to me, that's not a story. That's a lazy, cheap bit of writing to get around the idea that you would have to, take a dramatic risk and do something new if you wanted to follow, say, Rian Johnson's lead. Again, Abrams clearly has zero interest in doing that. Rise of Skywalker is literally nothing but fan service. All it does is remind you of the original trilogy. It does nothing new. Nothing. It even throws in the bad guy from the original trilogy just as a placeholder to be a problem for the last big action scene. And also his evil plan. So he spends most of this new trilogy apparently puppet mastering from behind. They explained Snoke was just like a beef jerky clone of something, I guess. Doesn't matter, because, again, Abrams never explained any of it anyway. But apparently he's been, sort of Scream 3 style. He's really the mastermind who's been pulling all the strings. And throughout most of the movie, he's like, kill Rey, I want you to kill her. She's a problem to me, go kill her. And Kylo's like, okay, I'm emo, I'll do that. And, so he finally, through this convoluted set of circumstances, they get to, Evil Planet X. And she walks into the room with the Emperor, and he's just like, actually, psych.
Missouri, was it? No.
I don't remember. But he's just like, psych, actually, I didn't really want you, or want to kill you. My plan was actually somehow that you would come here and kill me so that I could then possess you. Okay.
I didn't think that plan out too well. Like on
really
Red Letter Media's review.
Kind of didn't. And here's some more spoilers. For somebody whose whole shtick apparently was like, okay, no, I want you to actually kill me because then I'll win and I'll be all evil and my evil godliness will destroy the universe or whatever. And she's like, no, what can I do? Then she kills him. And, okay, roll credits. It's just like, okay, so I guess none of his plan mattered. And again, here's a problem that I have with J.J. Abrams. It's not his directing. He's a very skilled action director. He makes things all colorful and pretty. He can't foreshadow for shit. He doesn't know how to do this. He just shows you mysteriously unexplained things, doesn't explain any of it, and then he just has stuff happen. And Into Darkness is a good point to touch on because a lot of the things that are wrong with Rise of Skywalker are exactly the same things that bug the hell out of me about Into Darkness. There's a scene in Into Darkness where the villain, who has really obviously been conned the whole time, but the movie's like, oh, you don't know his secret. You know, he finally, they get him in the space jail, and he looks, at them, and he goes, I am Khan. Ooh. This big moment, and the only possible reaction the characters could have had to that moment is to go, huh? We don't know who that is. We're in a new timeline. That doesn't mean anything to us. So he's not saying that to them. He's literally saying it directly to the audience so that they can go, ooh, I've heard of that.
I break the fourth.
So instead of taking any new risks and pushing for new stories, he gets into other people's sandboxes like Star Trek or Star Wars, and he builds this very elaborate fan fiction that mostly is revolving around reminding you of the stuff that you already know. So, like I say, Rise of Skywalker is part 2 of the Abrams-verse Star Wars movies, and because it goes so very definitively out of its way to retcon The Last Jedi out of significance. Last Jedi, as much as I love that movie, it now does not matter. You can skip it, and it wouldn't matter, because it undoes all of its plot points that matter, and it does it, again, to me, with cynical contempt. There is a scene where Rey is, pissed off, so she goes back to Luke's planet for some reason, and she's burning a bunch of stuff, and then she's going to burn her lightsaber. And she throws it, and Luke catches it. His Force Ghost comes out, and he, again, practically looks right at the audience and says, a Jedi's weapon should be treated with more respect. That line, to me, was not him speaking to Rey. That was Abrams speaking to all the people who didn't like what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi.
So there he's actually saying you shouldn't have dissed Rian Johnson's story. Isn't he? Kind of saying that a little bit?
Well, what I'm saying is that Abrams clearly did not like what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi, so he retconned everything that Rian Johnson did into obsolescence or irrelevance so that he could go back and tell the story that he wanted with Force Awakens. Clearly, he always had it in mind that Rey was going to turn out to be Palpatine's granddaughter, and again, this comes down again to that whole, what do you think Star Wars should be? If you are like Abrams and you want nothing but fan service and reminders of stuff that you liked when you were 10, and nothing new, nothing new, not going to do that, forget Johnson, forget what he was trying to do, only the Emperor, and only, just rehashes of the same battle scenes and shit you've already seen. If you, as a little kid, thought maybe I could be a Jedi, maybe I'm 8 years old, maybe I could use the Force and be a cool Jedi, and that'd be awesome. What the original concept before Lucas totally hosed this with midichlorians is that the Force is as much about it's a spiritual thing. It's almost like a religious faith or something. You feel the wills. Well, like I say, Lucas kind of ruined it later, but in the original concept, anybody could be a Jedi if you just believed it enough. Abrams and company don't seem to believe that. So the reason that Rey matters in Rise of Skywalker isn't because of her choices or her character, or it's entirely just because of how she was born. It's her parentage. Her lineage matters more than she does. She's only important because of Palpatine. So now it's explained. Now that's how come she has the Force. It makes sense. It doesn't really, because how the hell did Palpatine have kids? But in any case, it's taking the notion of what it means to be, say, a Jedi in Star Wars, and saying it doesn't matter how much you believe it or want it, you have to be born to it. It's your genetics, basically. So to me, that's a very elitist attitude, and it's not one that I can identify with. It's no longer a story about underdogs who, through pluck and will and going through all these trials, they rise up and stand on their own. It's a story about privileged, powerful space aristocrats getting their way. I can't relate to that. I'm not a space aristocrat. And so it's like, there's this little stinger at the end where Abrams seems to be kind of trying to wink at the audience and say, she's like, she goes back to Tatooine, and this really nosy lady is just like, "What's your name?" Again, she's asking so that Rey can address the audience more so than anybody would actually do this. It's just like, who are you? What's your name? And Rey goes, "I'm Skywalker." So that's Abrams get out of jail free. He's saying, no, see, her past doesn't matter. She's choosing her path now. To which I say, bullshit. The movie doesn't support that argument. The movie straight up says Rey only matters because of her backstory, because of her parentage, because of her genetics. So you can have that little, I'm choosing to be a Skywalker now thing in the last 5 seconds. To me, it's a hollow gesture.